Hello, it is I, Ratupi from Ratupi's Game Room here with another Speculation Time podcast video. Today I am joined by two very special guests today. You two can introduce yourselves if you'd like.
Oh my god, how embarrassing. I'm Howard Heyman. Um, I'm not important at all or special, but I do write stuff on the internet sometimes, and that can be fun. But I do have opinions about SMT, so I'm happy you guys invited me over to this podcast.
I'm excited to hear what you have to say, even though we talk about SMT like every day.
Yeah, you keep sending messages to me about it. Jeez.
Sorry.
You know where to stop?
No.
I'm just kidding.
All
You're
right.
great.
Thank you. And then we have...
Oh, hello. I am Boneax. I draw and I have a few animations in YouTube, and I also really love Shin Megami Tensei and Persona and Devil Survivor. You know, every Megaten game. Pretty
Yeah.
I guess
much.
I should mention out of the three of us here, you guys are really talented. You also have like this whole webcomic thing going on. I don't want to divert the topic over to that. I just wanted to point that out. You guys
Oh, it's
have some
okay.
pretty cool webcomics, and it's really nice.
Boneax is definitely more talented than I, but yes, I do
Not
know
as
that.
untalented as me though. I do
You two are
nothing.
talented.
Well, I mean, drawing and stuff takes practice. I'm still learning every single day how to not draw terribly, so, you know.
I gave up the moment I was born.
Writing like you is pretty hard to Howard. I really commend your work.
Yeah, writing is definitely difficult. If you've watched any of my YouTube videos, you would know my writing is awful, except the ones that Howard edited, which are my best videos, but that's beside the point. Today, we are talking about two very important games that were announced just recently. I did a video discussing my initial thoughts on them back when the day it happened, like last week or something. You know, these days kind of just blur together at this point. But now that I've had a little bit more time to marinate with these things, today we are going to be talking about, of course, Nocturne HD and SMT 5. So first, we're going to start with Nocturne HD, and the first thing that we want to address is our thoughts and how we reacted to the remaster announcement. I'll go last because, you know, I'm the host, so I'll just save my opinions for
I
last.
think you should go first.
Me? All right.
Yeah.
Obviously, I'm very excited. I think this is definitely a day one buy for me. I'm going to get whatever special edition is going to be available for my bony little fingers to get. And I'm probably going to platinum it as soon as possible. Overall, I'm really happy that they did some minor changes, and I'm kind of upset that they didn't do certain changes too. I'll get more into detail about that a little bit later, but overall, it's a very positive reaction, but I feel like there's a couple things that could have been tweaked or changed a little bit, but that's all I'm going to say for right now.
What about you, Bone? What's your thoughts? How do you react? What was your first reaction to Nocturne HD?
It was like the first oh shit moment I had in like 2020, I think, because like
The first?
it was
Oh man.
yeah, like no, there's been some other things, but like SMT is like the big thing, so like it was like
We all
what
have
the
that
fuck.
thing. I know I was kind of that way when they announced Nier Replicant. It came out of left field. I didn't watch the stream. I don't watch these things. I usually don't care, so it was kind of like a weird. It happened one day before my birthday too, which was bizarre. But
Yeah.
it's just like, well, that's one fucking good early birthday present. Just seeing my
Was
one of
it
my favorite games of
Whiplash?
all time on HD, and that was fine.
What were you saying,
They
Bonex?
announced it. They announced it after like a WWE game. Like was yeah, like look
Yeah.
at this chibi game, and then one of the best RPGs of all time.
Yeah, we
I
got WWE backyard wrestling, whatever the heck, and then we got Nocturne HD afterwards. That was quite the switcheroo, if I say so myself.
I guess I'm gonna share my thoughts on on the actual remaster. As soon as I read the headlines, as soon as I woke up,
Hmm.
I'm actually excited for it. I'm down with it. I think I've always felt like Nocturne is a game that it's very. I mean, let's thinking objectively about what's good about a remaster. Why would you want a remaster? It's two things: preservation and visual, and having a visual upgrade.
Hmm.
Almost like a, and I think Nocturne needed both of those things. Not that Nocturne is particularly hard to obtain these days. It goes for pretty cheap on the resale market, but I think the reality is that not a lot of people own a PS2. Not a lot of people even own a PS3 that can play the PS Classics version.
Hmm.
So I think it's a good opportunity for new players, especially people like my friends who have never played Nocturne, who've never really dug deep into the SMT franchise as I have. It's going to be a nice, great chance to be able to experience a game for the first time, and even for players like us to revisit the game in a better looking form, better looking than before. I mean, and even better looking than emulation, I dare say.
Hmm.
So it and of course, with the announcement of the game on Switch, also being able to play the game on the go should make for a pretty interesting, pretty good experience.
Hmm. For
It
sure.
looks so
I'd
crisp.
love if it got ported to PC though. I'd really wish it got ported to PC.
Yeah, that'd be really nice. What were you saying, Boneax?
But it looks so crisp. Like the first thing that blew my mind was like the floor in the Amala labyrinth. Like that looks so good.
Oh yeah, it was freaking amazing. Like, I know they removed a little bit of the haze to the visuals, which I know some fans might have an issue with, but I honestly replacing that for the crispness of the visuals and like seeing the high definition like textures and everything is just amazing because I've seen Nocturne in emulated in a higher resolution and it looks beautiful regardless, but the texture work is just so crunchy and JPEGy, and seeing it actually clean and smooth is really really good, I think.
Now that you bring it up, I wanna like comment on a more technical level the things they've done with the remaster. Of course, I'm not the developer. I can speak for the changes they have made to the game as far as like remastering it goes. But from what I can tell, looking at screenshots and gameplay footage, um, I'm happy we've gotten so many texture improvements. I think they're small and subtle, not necessarily something that really sticks out to you, but I'm happy about it because they're preserving the art style, which is ultimately the most important thing about games like these: preservation, letting the game be played in its original form as close to the original as possible for newer generations.
Hmm.
And another thing I noticed is you said the game is lacking a little of the hazy look. I can actually explain it in a bit more technical detail. Um, they removed the accumulation motion blur effect, which I don't know if you guys know it, but it's a motion blur effect that was really common in the PS2 era, where several frames were blended together in every every frame, I'd say, which gave it
Right, I've
this kind
had
of
that a
hazy.
lot.
Yeah, a lot of PS2 games have this. I think I think it's actually become very infamous over the years, which is why people have which is probably why they removed it from the HD remaster, because I think a lot of people just straight up hate the effect, and they thought maybe the effect made the game look more muddy, more crunch, as Nick said, crunchy, not very good. So that's probably why they removed it. And something else I noticed they did with the visuals, they upped the contrast in the sense that brighter lights are now brighter and darker. Well, the darker lights are just as dark as they were before, but the brighter lights are brighter. Which some people I've seen some people be a little skeptical about that. I think they say that it's gonna take out of the dark atmosphere of the game. So we'll see. We'll see how it looks, how
Hmm.
this pans out.
And
The
speaking,
UI was also very improved. I noticed that it looks better than in the PlayStation 2 because I've been replaying Nocturne 2.
hmm,
Yeah. And speaking as someone who has played the game on an emulator, as Nick said, it's a completely different experience playing it on an emulator, upscaling it to HD, and even then I can say I'd probably pick the remaster over playing it on an emulator, especially because of the native widescreen support and the HD menus. Those are usually the things that kind of discourage me from playing games in emulators when there's an official thing available. Because there's so many things that you can improve in an HD remaster, but you cannot really improve when you're playing games on an emulator, and that's what I think is important about something like Nocturne HD.
Mm-hmm. And speaking of, atmosphere change, one complaint that I've heard from some fans, not a lot, I feel like more people are excited about it than not. One of the major changes coming to Nocturne HD, of course, is the new voice acting, and people are afraid that the voice acting might take away from the silent and quiet atmosphere of Nocturne. Personally, I don't think that's going to be an issue whatsoever if you've played other PS2 Megami Tensei games like Digital Devil Saga, which does have voice acting and things. I don't think it detracts from the overall atmosphere in any way, shape, or form. What do you two think?
Well, I think we should back up for a bit because, like, one of the big announcements watching that trailer is that once again they are going to be adding voice acting to Shin Megami Tensei Nocturne. Something that wasn't there before, something that wasn't there on any of the versions of the game we've had before.
Mm-hmm.
Which, once again, I want to hear your thoughts, Boneax. What are your thoughts? Are you camp screw the voice acting and not turn it off, or you camp want to hear the voices?
I am camp. Give me that voice acting. I want it.
Yeah.
I really don't think it will ruin the atmosphere because, like, Serial Experiment Lane, which is something that it's kind of similar in tone to Nocturne, has voice acting, of course, and it still is very oppressive. So I think it won't lose like that quality, and also I think that this could really be one of the best dubs from SMT. Like,
Mm-hmm.
most of my favorite Megaten games have dubs. Like, I love the dubs in Digital Devil Saga and SMT4, and I think that this will go on a similar route. Like, the voices we've seen so far sound very good. I hope we see Raido's voice soon.
Mm-hmm.
I am hopeful about the new voices. However, I can understand skepticism because after all, the game wasn't designed for voices in mind. So it is understandable how if the voice direction isn't on point, it could potentially ruin the atmosphere of the game for a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
I've done my research. I wish they announced the dub voices.
Mm-hmm.
Personally, I don't know
They did in
how
Japan.
the dub. Yes, in Japan. That's something I was gonna get there. Is that in Japan, it seems like it could be a mixed bag. I'm seeing both some talented, recognizable voice actors and also some voice actors that I never heard before personally.
Mm-hmm.
So it's could go either way. However, I trust the Japanese voice acting industry because I feel like more so than the Western dubbing part, it's far more consistent. And at the very least, we could get a very mediocre dub at the very worst of it.
Mm-hmm.
However, I want to discuss almost like the counterpoint because once again, I just finished discussing it from the perspective of theoretically speaking, how a dub could alter the atmosphere in a negative way if not handled correctly. I'm
Mm-hmm.
talking about the execution. But I also want to talk about the opposite end of the spectrum, how the voice acting could enhance the emotion of a lot of these scenes. And if you've played Nocturne, you can tell it's a very, despite its minimalism, it's a very cinematic game. It's the it's a very cinematic game with very elaborate cutscenes and a lot of strong atmosphere. And I can see how the drama, the personal characteristics of each of its players, of each of its main protagonists, could be enhanced by having voices, which could convey that nuance, that extra punch to a lot of the emotional arcs of the story, which could potentially make Nocturne HD the best version for a lot of people. I think an example I always like to bring up is Yuumi Neko no Naku Koro ni. which is a visual novel, which anyone in the planet should read, even though it's like
I
hundreds of
will. I
hours long.
promise.
Oh, you will, believe me. But somewhere along the line, it got a remake of sorts in PlayStation 3, which added voice acting, and I think the voice acting, jumping from not voiced to voiced for that specific example, was such a massive jump in quality that I genuinely think that anyone who reads the story should read it with the voices on, because the voices add so much character, add so much to the atmosphere, and that's so much of the emotional punch of every scene, that it's fully convinced me the power voice acting can give to any given game or novel or piece of media in general.
Mm-hmm.
It can add a lot, but at least when handled by the right people. So to the people who are doubting, I'd say give it a chance. If you don't like it, you can turn it off. I know I'm maybe sounding like a bit like an apologist right now, but ultimately, I think there's not enough evidence or not enough reasons to be concerned, as normally I try to look for those things.
Mm-hmm.
But in here, I think they might handle it pretty well. I'm hopeful. I can see the skepticism, but I'm hopeful.
Yeah, we do already have a voice for Raito Kuzunoha. He is voiced by Matt Mercer, I believe, in Soul Hackers, although I don't think he has much of a speaking line, if at all. It's mostly just grunts and things like that.
Mostly grunts.
Yeah, and whether or not they'll bring him back for Nocturne HD is completely up in the air. They could not. You never really know what they're going to do with minor roles such as that. But if you paid close enough attention to when Demi-Fiend briefly talks in the English trailer, it almost sounds like Xander Mobius to me, who, if you don't know, is the voice of Joker and the announcer for Super Smash Brothers and stuff. It sounded like he
And
had
Dagda.
that. And Dogda, yeah, he had that cadence to him where it was like that deep voice that Xander is known for, and I kind of heard it come through with the Demi-Fiend's voice, but I might have just been overthinking it or overhearing it or something like that.
It does sound like him. I also really liked his Japanese voice. Like, I think that's the perfect Demi-Fiend voice.
Mm-hmm.
I like both voices personally, I think.
I just think it's weird that they gave him a voice in general and not like a grunt or anything. They gave him like a whole spoken line, which is very bizarre because I don't think Demi-Fiend ever really talks outside of dialogue options, which mostly consist of yes, no, what are you doing, I don't know, and stuff like that. So it's very peculiar.
It's from a commercial, actually, that line.
Oh,
yeah, that's what I wanted to say. That's what I wanted to say, that it does feel like something was made specifically for the trailer. It's probably not something you should take so seriously. However, it does bring up the interesting possibility that maybe one of the voice actors who's already involved with the project did the voice for Demi-Fiend in the trailer.
Mm-hmm.
Which, I don't know.
He might announce the demon names like they do in like Persona and stuff like that, where he could just call out like, a demon's name when he summons it too. So,
but looking at the gameplay footage, I don't think that's gonna happen. I mean, we have gameplay footage, and the game seems very faithful to the original.
Which is a point I wanted to bring up. One thing I'm very disappointed in. Not gonna make or break it for me because I've already played the PS2 version, but it just sucks that they've had this opportunity to change it and they didn't. And if you know me, you know what I'm already about to talk about. It's the really muffled soundtrack, and for some reason they seem to keep it in the Japanese gameplay we got that following Thursday after the trailer dropped.
Well, you're playing Nocturne when everything sounds like you're playing the game in a tin can.
Yes. What were you saying, Boneax?
That I think maybe the audio is still not finished.
Yeah.
That's me being hopeful, but
yeah.
I also something about the audio that I hope they don't change or at least do something similar is the voices of the demons. Like, I really want the old voices that go like
yeah. Or like the Saoju's whenever he does his little moves or whatever.
It seems
Yeah.
they are keeping it though, looking at the gameplay footage. It's just that more of the spoken dialogue of the demons is being voiced. If you all heard Matador's voice in the 14-minute gameplay trailer we saw. But going back to the 14-minute gameplay trailer, I think it solidified my thoughts on what this remaster is going to be, and I think calling it a remaster might actually be a little too generous. I mean, obviously some stuff has been improved, some stuff has been cleaned up. However, this is as far into the end of the spectrum in terms of like, we have a spectrum. It's on one end you have a straight port, and on one end you have a full-on remake. And I think this is far closer to the straight port end of the spectrum than an actual remake or remaster, because as you said, it seems everything is being done almost like straight down the source code, which once again, the reason why this might be the case is because of just an engine issue that's just something that they cannot change, or something they don't want to change to keep the experience as authentic as possible, which is kind of strange considering that they're also trying to add some stuff in other places. However, as Boneax pointed out, it could be changed prior to release. I think if people voice their feedback enough, they might actually fix it before release. But I wouldn't. Something I want to point out, since you brought it up, is that I know a lot of people are hopeful for a lot of changes. A lot of people are hopeful for quality of life improvements. A lot of people are hopeful for new gameplay, and I just want to almost like give you a dose of reality. Don't expect too much out of this. If I don't think there's any evidence or any reason to believe that Shin Megami Tensei Nocturne HD Remaster is going to be anything but that. A lot of people would be disappointed by the fact that, we won't have quality of life improvements. And a lot of people might tell me, Howard, how can you say this? You have no evidence. Well, actually, I do. Looking at all the gameplay footage, it does seem to be exactly the same game on PS2. Looking at the websites, looking at all the press statements, it seems the goal here isn't we're modernizing Nocturne for a new audience, or we're modernizing Nocturne for returning players. It's we are preserving Nocturne for a new console generation, and take it or leave it. Which is once again why it's not a deal breaker for me that they didn't fix the audio, because it really is the exact same game you got on PS2. Take it or leave it. If you don't care, don't buy it. If you do care and you want to play the game again, or if you're new to the series and you want to play Nocturne for the first time, if you've never played an SMT game before, Nocturne, it's a wonderful place to start. I definitely recommend it as a great place to start for a lot of people. So I think that's what it's for. Take it or leave it. That's all I can say.
For sure. Did you have anything to add on that topic, Boneax, before we move on?
Oh, in the topic of the voice acting, not really.
Yeah, I mean, I'm excited for it and everything, and with the audio, I mean, hopefully within these next couple months, 3 months or so before it comes out in Japan, they could swap out the audio really fast, or if Howard said it's a engine issue they can't really fix, I mean, it's not the end of the world. I've already played through the whole game with the music sounding like in a tin can, like you have mentioned before, so it's not the end of the world. It was just something I hoped would have been fixed or changed, but it's not going to ruin the experience for me or anything like that. Lastly,
aren't we forgetting someone though? We're forgetting someone.
Raito Kuzunoha?
Yes, we're forgetting our boy, military man, who got censored in Korea and China. We're not gonna get into that controversy. Just gonna point that out. We're not gonna get into that controversy right here, because I don't think as Westerners we have enough to add to it that hasn't already been said. But what do you guys think of the fact that we're not getting good old Dante in this game?
What do you think, Boneax?
I'm gonna be honest. I love Devil May Cry, but I prefer Raito.
Yeah, I mean, I love Dante too, especially all the memes and stuff that came out of the whole thing, you know, featuring Dante from the Devil May Cry series, or Dante chasing you through the invisible maze and just feeling the anxiety build up in you. But I mean, it's once again, it's just, I feel like the inclusion of Dante in the first place was just a gimmick selling point. He never really added much to the game, and the Raito version, minus some dialogue changes, is the content's essentially the exact same on a surface level. You still get to experience all the same stuff you did with Dante, it's just the dialogue is changed, and I guess the less goofy atmosphere around Raito Kuzunoha, but it's not like a whole experience is being stripped out of the game. It's just, you know, character model swap and some text change here and there. All the same little things you do with Dante are still there, so it doesn't bother me that much.
And a skill with peers.
Yeah.
I think I'm gonna be the dissenting opinion in here. I mean, I just want to clarify. I'm mostly on the same side of Nick, where it's, of course, I don't think this is the end of the world, and I don't think it's a deal breaker. And it's one of those things where, well, if you want Dante, you could always just emulate the game, or play the original. Since once again, it's not that big of a deal, at least gameplay-wise, story-wise. However, I've been looking at footage of Raito Kuzunoha, like the cutscenes and stuff, and I think when you look at that part of the plot of the Maniacs re-release, that those scenes were almost like structured for a character with a lot more presence and bravado, like Dante, someone who gave a lot more energy and almost like style to that segment of the plot. It might have been gimmicky, but I think you could also argue that the entire new plot line of Maniacs is horribly gimmicky and doesn't add anything to the actual core Nocturne narrative. So I think in a detached, almost ironic sort of way, Dante is a more fun character to have around than Raito. Raito doesn't quite add as much personality or add as much have as much of a strong presence, and it's something I've seen pointed out even in forums and blogs, that this kind of role was meant for a character with more of a sense of placement in the story in terms of how much he stood out, how much you remembered him. So while I think this isn't gonna be as fun as Dante's character was in the original, it's not a deal breaker ultimately. However, if you told me that we could have the option to have Dante instead of Raito, I would have picked Dante instead of Raito. But ultimately, it doesn't really matter because gameplay-wise, it's still the same thing. And as I previously mentioned, the entire plot of the Maniacs re-release is really gimmicky and pretty bad. So, not like I particularly care about that aspect of Shin Megami Tensei 3. So, it's not like it's gonna kill the game for me.
Yeah.
Also, you reminded me that in Nocturne Chronicle Edition, like Raito, as far as I know, barely talks or doesn't talk. Like Goro does all the talking for him.
Yeah, that's something else I noticed, which definitely gives the dialogue more of a flat, almost like third-person perspective that doesn't quite have the same energy that Dante's funny quips and edgy one-liners gave it in the original.
Yeah, for sure. Let's see. So we talked a little bit about what we would like to see added or changed, and we know at this point that a lot isn't going to be added or changed, but one of the minor things I already said was I'd like them to fix the audio quality. Was there anything else that you guys would like to see fixed or changed at all?
Boneax, do you have anything to say?
Yeah, like I'd like for a little bit of improvement on the fusion. Like this is a big point of contention because like Nocturne's difficulty comes a bit from the fusion system too, but I'd like to see like something like Strange Journeys fusion or Devil Survivor, because like that's like the middle point, like not like the classic ones, but also not like SMT4's fusion. I think that would be like a good middle ground.
I I can definitely agree. Personally, I'm not gonna set my expectations high enough to see just to expect anything being added to it. But in an ideal scenario where this game got ported to PC and modders were able to add a lot of these features into the game, I definitely love for some quality of life improvements. Like maybe not something as drastic as changing the fusion system, but in a more minor sense. For instance, I would like to be able to see all the skills that Magatama can give you before you actually get them, which can be a bit of a hassle for Nocturne players, if you new players who don't know what those skills are. I personally had to look up a guide to see what those skills were to prepare myself a whole lot better to make sure I fully cemented what my build was gonna be. Another thing I would want is maybe not the same fusion system as Devil Survivor or the other game, but I would like to see skill inheritance being added into the game. I know I've kind of defended Nocturne for its random skill inheritance system. I've said previously that it's more rewarding that way. It can feel more rewarding when you do get the skills you want. But generally speaking, it is a very tedious process that could be streamlined in with just basic skill inheritance, where you can choose what skills you want to inherit instead of having to rely on the RNG to do it for you. So that's definitely just small things. That's all I really want to see in this remaster. Small things that would improve the experience for returning players and new players without changing what it's about or changing the gameplay in any big way. And also, once again, polish up the presentation to get rid of a lot of the limitations of the engine, hardware, or the times, like the tin can audio. But I'm not gonna set my expectations that high. I don't think that's ever gonna happen.
Yeah. Another thing I'd like to see added. I know it's a long. Oh, Aqua. Shh. Sorry.
Hi, bird.
The birds are getting rowdy. I was saying one thing I'd like to see added for sure, although it's not going to be very likely, is I would like to see what is Aqua? Calm down.
Mood.
It's okay. I'll edit it all out in post. What? Are you gonna scream again? Are you gonna scream again? I would like to see them add new demons to the game, because I saw with, of course, Persona 3 and Persona 4 and, of course, Persona 4 Golden, which all run off the same engine as Nocturne and have same model qualities. They added a lot of... Yeah, they run off a... Aqua! They run off a modified version of the Gamebryo engine, and but the model quality and stuff's consistent through all... They're consistent through all the games, and I was gonna say they can go ahead and add those demons and things that are present in the Persona games and stuff like that aren't present in Nocturne. That's all I was gonna say. All right, Aqua, jeez.
Maybe.
Yeah, I like that too. Like, I don't think we will get like demons that were in Persona 5, but we'll get some from the. We could get some from the PS2 era if they go that route. Like Raido has some, Digital Devil Saga has others. I would like to see the Atma avatars in demon form. That will be awesome.
Yeah, that would be pretty cool too.
Ultimately, I can agree. Yeah, it would be cool. Maybe it would just be too much effort. I don't think they're really willing to put in that much effort to add to the experience, except for maybe the merciful difficulty. However, it's entirely possible that they could, as DLC. God only knows. Those Japanese really like to nickel and dime you with their DLC options.
They could add an Arsene DLC watch.
Or, I mean, something I always felt Nocturne was always lacking was overpriced female costume DLC. I mean, when I played the game on PS2, I felt, man, it would be really nice if I could just dress up Chiaki on an unnecessary bikini. You know what I mean? The unnecessary Christmas outfit.
The high cut armor.
A Persona 5 costume, yeah. Persona 5 costume. That would be nice. That'll be $99 for all of those, please. Thank you.
That reminds me of like the unlockable costumes in Silent Hill 4.
Yeah,
Or Silent Hill 3. Remember when you unlocked costumes instead of buying them as DLC? That was fun.
never heard of it. All
Oh,
right.
it's really been that long, huh?
So the next part was, what could this and SMT1 on Switch Online mean for the future of SMT ports? Personally, I think SMT1 on Switch is a very peculiar and particular case in Japan because, you know, we've only gotten an official translation here in America for iOS, and as hopeful as I was that we'd get the iOS version on Switch, it's important to recognize that the Switch port is just a straight up port of the SNES version, so that was definitely considerably a lot less work to bring that over than porting a port of the Game Boy version onto iOS, then take that iOS version and port it back onto Switch. That would take a lot of work, and I don't think Atlas USA has any incentive to do that besides some hardcore fans who would buy it, which honestly would amount to them not making a whole lot of money, so they wouldn't really do it.
Moreover, they didn't even port the game though. They just put up a ROM.
Oh, it's
That's
just
what
an
Nintendo Switch
emulator?
Online is. Yeah, Nintendo Switch Online is just an emulator. And what they did is they put up a Japanese SMT1 ROM on their store because that's essentially Nintendo's strategy to kind of inflate the value of their online system, just putting in a bunch of ROMs in there. So it would actually be even more effort for Atlas USA to bring it over to the US because they'd have to transport their own translation over to the SNES, limitations and all.
Yeah.
And that would be a pain in the ass. So that's something they're definitely not gonna do.
What do you think, Boneax?
Yeah, like I think that it's a shame that we probably won't get it in the online version for America because like it's probably one of the reasons why I use the SNES Online service at all, the Super Famicom service, and it's kind of a hassle playing it with a guide, but it feels good playing it in an actual console because all my life I've only played SMT1 and SMT2 in emulators, and
Good
it
old
feels
AN
good.
Genesis.
Yeah, Lord and Savior.
One of the earliest translations, actually, those Alien Genesis translations, they go way back since before even Nocturne came out. I think that's actually very interesting.
Probably came out when I
Yeah,
was born.
Yeah. Also,
like in the
funnily enough,
90s.
Yeah.
my friend had such a hard time getting into Shin Megami Tensei 1 on the SNES that I legitimately offered him, hey, look, there's a PSX port and a GBA port. Those are way better, but you'd have to use a translation guide to play them. And he was like, I'll consider it. I'd do it.
I wish we got the PS1 version because it's got true 3D environments and stuff. It's just, it looks so
That
I
good.
should make it
didn't
more
know that.
playable.
Yeah.
Didn't know that.
You
I thought it was only like the new music, but I didn't know it had like Soul Hacker style backgrounds, and that looks awesome,
No, the
especially
PSX
in
version is in
SMT2.
Yeah.
the PSX version is in 3D, which in my opinion makes the games a hell of a lot more playable than they are on the SNES and GBA. But they're not translated, so we can't do anything about that.
I even found Kyuuyaku Megami Tensei more playable than SMT1, but you'll have to learn more about that in my review coming soon. I'll leave it at that.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
a
we get
spoiler,
it.
but I agree that Kyuuyaku is a better game than SMT1.
Kyuuyaku is fucking great, at least in terms of how they remastered the visuals, but I think that's a bit of a tangent.
Yeah. We can save that topic for another time.
I do have something to add though, and it's well, I don't think SMT1 on Switch Online really amounts to much because once again, that's just kind of Nintendo's strategy. Take up a bunch of classic games, dump the ROMs into their service, and wash your hands off of it. SMT HD Remaster, it sets an interesting precedent for Atlas. Same with Persona 4 Golden on Steam, which is two things essentially. One, Atlus is more willing to do straight ports now. Because I think that was one of my biggest issues with Atlus, that they always refuse to do straight up ports and remasters, even though most of their new audience or even returning fans are unable to play the games on modern consoles, to play the games on their platform of choice with higher resolutions, higher frame rates. We are still locked to playing these games in old consoles. Why? Because Atlas is stuck to this old mentality of the re-release. That every time you gotta put a game on another console, you have to add it with put a bunch of content in there to justify it. Which some people might say, of course, oh, but they're giving us a run. They're giving us more worth for our money. But I disagree because oftentimes you look at the trend of a lot of these re-releases, they have content for the sake of adding content and not because the game actually needed it. Sure, you have those quality of life improvements that we all love, but you also have these crappy campaigns with very that fall into cliches, that fall into tropes that Atlas tends to repeat. Like it's already kind of a meme how every single Atlas re-release has a weird and mysterious girl that is key to the events of the game's plot, and a whole new ending that is the true ending of the game that gives you all the more meaning.
Could you
And
imagine if they
oftentimes
added that to Nocturne?
they kind of did. That's true demon ending.
Kind of, yeah.
As I've said, it's the Maniacs re-release falls into this too. When you look at the writing of the Maniacs content, it's so almost contradictory to the entire point of the original game. That storyline, those themes, what Koji Okada and Kazuma Kaneko were trying to do. And you see that trend being repeated over and over and over. So that's why it's kind of puzzling or even intriguing, fascinating that with Persona 4 Golden on PC and Shin Megami Tensei Nocturne HD Remaster, we're seeing Atlus not only be willing to just straight up port games, which is perfectly fine, mind you. I'm fine with remasters, I'm fine with ports, I'm fine with game preservation in any form. That's a good thing. Objectively a good thing that more people can play the game in their platform of choice without having to hunt these old consoles or have to adapt to these old, outdated video formats so they can play their favorite games or play games they should be playing that they have not played before. So it's objectively a good thing. But another thing I wanted to point out is that this also means that those surveys work. If you like, why is Persona 4 Golden on PC? Why is Shin Megami Tensei 3 Nocturne on Switch and PS4? Because you guys asked for it. Because everyone was saying, we want ports of these games. We want these games to be remastered on higher definitions. And they said, yes, we're giving it to you. So that's an interesting precedent that I definitely want to support. That's why I bought Persona 4 Golden day one. Even though I'm not going to play the game yet, I still bought it because I want Atlus to port their games to PC. I want this to be a precedent that becomes historical. I want them to port more of the games to PC. I want them to remaster more of their old PS2 games. That's why I'm going to buy Nocturne. This is a good
I wouldn't
thing.
be surprised with the service. I wouldn't be surprised if in the next year or so we see like a Switch port of Persona 2 Innocent Sin and Eternal Punishment, or a port of Persona 3 to like a modern console.
I think that's a bit leaning heavily into the pipe dream territory because I think it's evident that Atlus's relationship with the Persona 2 duology and Persona 1 game is a bit frisky, I want to say. It's they have a strange relationship with it. However, I definitely love to see those games ported on PC. And the one thing I wouldn't be surprised of is if Persona 3 got a PC port in the near future. I'm almost convinced of it. It seems very likely. Something Atlus would be very likely to do.
Next year is the Persona 25th anniversary, so anything is possible.
Anything is possible. I mean, I definitely adore it if Persona 2 Oh, and Persona 2 got a port on modern systems. I think it would be amazing. Uh, and even Persona 1, I'd love Persona 1 to finally have a definitive edition that
with the original
keeps
music.
with the the original music, with a lot of the original, even the original CGs. At least giving us the option to choose between new and old,
I
but still
am
has those,
Philemon.
but still has those quality of life improvements that we saw in the PSP version.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I don't think it's likely, at least for those 3 games by R&D1 Studio, but I love it. Atlas, if you're listening to me right now, please do it. Make me happy.
All right. Well, moving right along then, we still have one more game to talk about, although there's significantly less info on it, so it won't be quite as long. We got SMT 5. So what are your guys' initial thoughts and reactions on the new trailer?
Well, I bought a Switch for this game, and I am really, really happy to how it's looking. And I really wasn't expecting to see it in that direct. Like I thought that we will see it in Tokyo Game Show at best, and if not, like next year, because I was thinking that it was gonna be like a bit like the weight of Persona 5 at this point. But I'm glad that it isn't like surpassing like a normal dev cycle of Shin Megami Tensei.
Mm-hmm. Well, if you
Yeah.
think about it, it's been almost as long between SMT 4 and SMT 5 as it was between SMT 2 and Nocturne in terms of main games. Because I know there's small games in between them, but like still, that's crazy to think about.
Nick, what are your thoughts
I'm
and
incredibly
reaction?
excited. I'm right there with Boneax. I bought a Switch just for this game. Everything else was an added bonus to it, so I'm definitely super excited for it. There are some concerns I have, especially with how, uh, the main team R&D1, which is now Team Maniacs, I suppose, has kind of had a bit of an identity crisis recently with the release of SMT4 Apocalypse. Even though I still think that game is great in certain areas, there are a lot of places where that game falls short, and definitely like your opinion, Howard, where it kind of betrays what SMT,
Hey now, you're getting ahead of myself.
where it betrays the
Hey now, don't put words in my mouth. Let me defend myself when I'm saying my garbage, controversial thoughts. And I'm gonna say this right out of the bed, right out of the gate. I am the dissenting opinion here. I am not excited for this game. My opinion on it hasn't changed since it has developed over time. I didn't see anything in this trailer that convinced me that this game is going to be the game I would want to see out of the Shin Megami Tensei name. That name carries weight, and I don't see this game representing that. I am not entirely ready to write it off yet, but I really want to write it off so I don't have to brace myself for disappointment, because what I have seen is not convincing me that this is going to be a great Shin Megami Tensei game. I will expand upon my thoughts a little later, because they are complex. They have a lot to do with my relationship with this series over the years, over the decade or so I've been into it. But generally speaking, I just want to put that out there. I am the dissenting opinion here. I I am I still want to see what they do with it before I judge it. It's not as an instant knee-jerk reaction like the Shin Megami Tensei 4 final Famitsu announcement, but it isn't something that inspires hope in me either. So that's kind of where I stand right now. But guys, what are your thoughts on the trailer? General speculation on the story, setting. What do you guys think?
I'll let you go ahead, Bonax. I want to hear what you think.
Okay, Well, this is like the thing I've been thinking ever since it came out, like the trailer. I haven't been stopping thinking about it, and uh, personally, like knowing that this is Team Maniacs, like the people who made like SMT4 and Apocalypse. I know that Apocalypse is controversial, but I still really like it. It's one of my favorite 3DS games, but I prefer vanilla.
Oh yeah,
But
I just
and
I just want to leave that out there. I don't like Final. SMT4 Final, I completely written it off. So once again, on the dissenting opinion here, I don't
no,
like that game. I really don't.
it's valid. I was mad at that game like
No,
for a
it's
year,
fine.
and then I was like, oh, this game is actually
Yeah, you
really
guys are free to
really
like
good.
it. I can't.
Yeah, it was
And I'll
like,
expand upon that later when we talk about what we'd like to see with the game, because I have many thoughts about this series and the teams behind the team making the games right now, the teams making the games back then, and how that reflects on this new game that's coming out.
yeah.
But keep going. I kind of interrupted you.
Oh yeah, like uh continuing from what you said, I like Apocalypse, but I don't want Apocalypse 2 in this game. I think that's
Yeah.
something that we all share. And well, this SMT4 is like, along with Silent Hill 3, is like one of the most important games to me personally. Like, it's my favorite RPG of all time personally. I know that it's not an usual opinion to hear, like in a series that has some of the best games of all time, but like I have a special connection with SMT4, and knowing that the same team is making 5 is making me very happy. And I think that we might see some shakeups, some differences compared to their previous games. Like the playing on Switch and PS4 has opened my eyes to how limited the 3DS was hardware wise. So like now I'm really excited to see how this game will look, because like SMT4 had a lot of limits, a lot of like issues regarding like the system limits, and it didn't quite realize like the the elusive Kaneko scenario. Like it had to pull back on that to make something that could run on the 3DS. And
Funny enough,
I'm
I read bits of that scenario the other day.
oh yeah,
Yeah,
it's
there's
actually great.
translations of it if you want to read it.
I wish it will get the Quantum Devil Saga treatment.
Probably not, since it really is just the first draft, not in all sense of the word, it really is just the first draft in a lot of ways.
Yeah. The what was it? I think one thing to keep in mind though is what came out after SMT4 Apocalypse, which was uh, what was it?
Strange Journey Redux.
Hashtag
Oh,
FE, which proved that SMT is not dead. No, I'm kidding. Of course, I'm talking about Strange Journey Redux. The new scenario in that, of course, adds the stereotypical new mystery girl, which we've all come to begrudgingly accept
Except,
at this point. But beside that, the new route is actually pretty compelling, and it fits in line with pretty much rest of the other endings in Strange Journey. It doesn't mess with the tone all that much, and actually has a pretty somber tone if you complete it. And I think that's proof that if Team Maniacs puts their head in the right headspace, they can definitely achieve gold. It's just having to not bend over backwards to try to appeal to everybody, because I feel like that was the pitfall for SMT4 Apocalypse, of course, which was trying to appeal to everybody by adding, beach scene DLC and all these
ejaculating sea cucumbers.
and all these waifu options and everything. And I feel like if they just put their head in the right place, they can definitely achieve something really good with SMT 5, which is what I'm hoping. And getting back onto the general topic of it, what do I think the story is going to be about? Well, Kazuyuki Yamai, or as he's better known as Maniacs, the head of Team Maniacs, he expressed that he wanted the game to be about, kind of SMT's take on modern issues such as like war and unemployment and uncertainty about the future, and how politics really cause stress in everyday people and things like that. And I think that's an interesting take. I'm open
Very
to
relevant topics for today.
yeah.
I'm just not sure that this team in particular is going to be able to give them justice in a nuanced, mature kind of way, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I mean, like, it only got more relevant recently, so it's very interesting to see how their 2017 mindset translates to modern day's mindset. But I think the game will definitely revolve around that, and I think it'll be maybe like an allegory or something like that about coming to terms with the stresses of modern day life, kind of like how SMT2 is kind of like an allegory for the New Testament and the Bible, or
That's correct,
or things like that of that nature. And I think if they're careful with it and they do a really good job in direction and writing, I think they can pull it off spectacularly. We didn't get to see barely any of the story in any of these trailers except God, whichever version it is, whether it's Yahweh, Demiurge, or Shekinah, or whatever we don't know yet, is dead, and that's all we know so far. But that's my guess, is it's going to try and be an allegory for the stresses of modern day life, just based off of the interviews that we've heard and seen before. What do you guys think?
I think that's a very literal take on the story, which it's what the interviewer has, what they've said in interviews, and that's a fair assessment. Personally speaking, on a more aesthetic level, on a more personal judgment sort of way, and seeing the way Yamai has talked about this game in interviews, is that oh, by the way, thanks for the excitement, Aqua. I know you really like listening to me talk, but my general take on this is that Yamai is trying to make his own Nocturne clone, for better or for worse. I'm looking at the imagery they're using. It looks very Nocturne-esque. However, I would add that it's more on the derivative side than as a legitimate homage to Nocturne. I think it goes back to the identity crisis thing you pointed out earlier, where I feel like the new SMT teams are so desperate to make the series what it is by cramming in as many visual motifs and callbacks to earlier games, which were greatly original, incredibly original games, inventive, fascinating, and they're trying to cram in those visual motifs into their games to make it feel more like that, even though the direction they would rather take, or the direction they're more comfortable with taking, is not in the same direction as Kazuma Kaneko or Koji Okada. But I think that is a more complicated debate that I will get to later. It is very frustrating that I have to keep saying this, but I will develop my thoughts on this much later on, when we talk about another one of our points. But Boneax, do you have anything else to add to that?
Yeah, like, I think it's still pretty early to compare it 100% to Nocturne. Like, I remember the first things we saw of SMT4 were like mostly Mikado, so I wouldn't be surprised if the setting is more expensive than that.
Funnily enough, I keep going. Sorry.
Yeah, I'm still not sure what the world will be like, but honestly, this might be the SMT4 fanboy in me, but I see a lot of blasted Tokyo in the world, more than the Vortex world.
Funnily enough, though, I'd say that the world maybe not the writing itself, the world building, but the world design of SMT4 was perhaps its most fascinating aspect. Particularly Mikado, because it's almost ironic that SMT has always branded itself as being the punk alternative to the general JRPG dogma.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of ironic then that, well, before the series had to stand out by being in a modern setting, since modern high school settings are so prevalent in Japanese RPGs these days, it was kind of an ironic twist for SMT4 to start out in a medieval fantasy setting, and I think that was a very clever twist. I don't think they did enough with it, but at the same time, it's like, well, what can you do when you're not really expanding upon the scenario draft that Kazu Mechanical left behind?
Yeah, for sure.
I think that Kaneko wanted to do more with Mikado, but like they didn't do his whole idea. And despite like the little time that we spend on Mikado, like I think Naraku is like one of the strongest initial dungeons in the series.
The
Personally,
game leaves a
like
strong first impression, that's for sure.
Mm-hmm. The let's see. So the next point is what was something that you guys would like to see in this game?
What's something you would like to see, Boneax?
mm, personally, I will honestly be happy with pretty much anything that the game ends up being, but like my my most wanted thing is like that it keeps the affinity system from SMT4 Apocalypse and the improvements to Hama and Mudo.
Mm-hmm.
Also, like I hope that the story is good. Like I love SMT4, but like the narrative is not like the best, and Apocalypse even less. I hope that it takes a page from SMT2 and Strange Journey, which I think are the best stories in like the main series.
Mm-hmm. I agree
What
with
about
that.
you, Nick? What would you like to see in the next game?
I'd like to see them take advantage of Sega's wallet in all cases of the word, because previously SMT games.
If the Switch hardware allowed it, though.
Yeah, yeah. The problem with SMT games, up until this point, was always just either budget or just hardware limitations. Usually they were able to work around hardware limitations, so that wasn't really too much of an issue. The main part came in part from just budgetary issues and having to cut back on a lot of content and things they wanted to do just out of lack of money, because people don't seem to realize that before Index and before Sega, Atlas wasn't basically an indie studio at that point. Pretty much they did commission work for companies like LJN and Namco, of course, but they were at their core pretty much just an independent studio doing their own thing, so they only had whatever money they had in their pockets to do it. But now that they're a part of a bigger tree company, being Sega, I feel like, and with the reputation of Persona 5 and everything being this gigantic success, and Persona 5 being tied to Megami Tensei and everything, I feel like I hope that they take that extra clout and budget that they got from that and put it into SMT 5 and not be afraid to hold back on any concepts that they really want to push forward. And that's pretty much the main thing that I want out of this game. And I also want to see it be something that fans of old and new can appreciate, because that's one thing that makes me sad is, of course, like people who just gave up on SMT now just because they don't like the direction that the new games are going in. And I would just like to see a game going back to its roots, not literally like how SMT4 did it, but like go back to its roots in terms of design philosophy and things like that, and basically be a natural progression of what we saw in Nocturne and Strange Journey and SMT2 and stuff, because I feel like the natural progression kind of stopped after that point, and I'd like to see them push the envelope a little bit more. That's what I'd like to see.
I mean, funny you mentioned the whole budget thing, because I remember very clearly in an interview with Kazuma Kaneko, he mentioned how the team knew they couldn't pull off something as impressive or flashy as the Final Fantasy or Dragon Quests of the time. So the only way Shin Megami Tensei could stay relevant was simply by being unlike anything else out there on the market. So, funnily enough, just to start off my thoughts on what I'd like to see, I would like Shin Megami Tensei 5 to be unlike anything on the market, to be an SMT game. Which brings me finally to the topic I wanted to discuss, and you guys are free to add as much as you want into it, because it's gonna be a bit of a long, I don't want to say rant, but it's gonna be a bit of a long one. The Shin Megami Tensei name holds weight to me because of that. We all have a similar history with this series. I believe most of us started with 4. If I'm not mistaken.
Main one, yeah.
I started with Nocturne, I think, or
You started with
SMT2.
Nocturne?
I don't remember.
Or 2?
Yeah,
I see. Personally, I remember when I played Shin Megami Tensei 4 when I was like 13, I'd say, at the time. I was still a teenager, I was still getting into video games, and when I first played that game, it was my favorite game of all time for a bit. Because I thought, wow, there really is nothing else like this. And I think that really set my impression of what the Shin Megami Tensei franchise was. However, tastes changed and tastes evolved over time. Immediately after 4, the next game I chose to play was the first Shin Megami Tensei. And then I played Shin Megami Tensei 2. Then I played Shin Megami Tensei Strange Journey. Then I finally played Nocturne. And playing those other games, I almost saw that rabbit hole get deeper and deeper. So games that were so very thoughtful. They maybe aren't the most flashy, the most satisfying, the most fluid games of all time, but goddamn, are they not like anything out there? And revisiting Shin Megami Tensei 4, I felt this odd disconnect between wanting to preserve that punk attitude and wanting to provide something more insular. Because when I think about what made those early games so great, it is definitely due to the influence of the people making it. Those games are a miracle. They are like the Team Silent of role-playing games, in the sense that if it wasn't made by those people, those very specific people, it could have been a completely different product. The vision of people like Kazuma Kaneko, his vast degree of influences, the philosophies of Koji Okada and how he wanted his games to stand out from the crowd and be different, be unique. They all coalesced into games that challenged its players, not just in the difficulty sense, but in the storytelling sense as well. They presented narratives that didn't have you playing as a hero, someone who everyone looked up to. They had you playing as a normal everyday guy being faced with a extraordinary situation, and they used this basis to present you with many fascinating concepts that might not even stick to you at the moment, but they carry so much weight through symbolism, through looking at the mythology. It challenged you to interpret its text looking at the mythology it's based on. You mentioned Shin Megami Tensei 2 is it's a metaphor for the New Testament in a way. But this is true, and this is a conclusion you can definitely take when you look at the narrative of Shin Megami Tensei 2, the parallels it has to the text, the parallels it has to real mythology, the parallels it has to all these different pieces of literature. Same with the first Shin Megami Tensei game, same with Shin Megami Tensei Nocturne. Though these games have so many parallels in literature, mythology, it really challenges your mind to think endlessly about the concepts that it introduces. And it introduces them in a very minimalistic, thoughtful way. And if it not for the influence of these creators, it wouldn't have been possible to get games like this. And all of it peaked with Shin Megami Tensei 3 Nocturne, the game that brought those elements to a higher level of polish, a higher degree of artistic, creative presentation with visual storytelling that is fascinating and gives me so much every time I revisit it. Shin Megami Tensei Strange Journey was also a great installment to the series because, in a way, Nocturne understood that a lot of the concepts from Shin Megami Tensei 1 and 2 were exhausted. You cannot do more with Law Chaos Neutral because those games already did just about everything you could do with them. They already exhausted the possibilities. It's more limiting than you might think it is. So Nocturne decided, well, we're going to take it a step further. As you said, logical progression. What if morality wasn't based on something as binary as Law Chaos Neutral, but perhaps something more chaotic, which brings us into philosophies, ideologies, the shaping of a new world based on the thoughts of individuals, and how those thoughts can move and create and preserve. It has very unique and dense themes about all these things, which make it a fascinating storyline on a conceptual level. It was never really about characters or drama, but those aspects complemented and helped you understand the thematic aspects and made it fascinating. And I think Shin Megami Tensei Strange Journey didn't elevate the thematic conceptual level, but it did give fans a lot of a swan song, if you may, a last hurrah for the series. It introduced a lot of the themes you're familiar with, but put them in a completely different context. It still innovated with its presentation. It had a very unique setting. It had characters which were more fleshed out and developed, while still representing a lot of the same concepts they used to before. And in a great logical fashion. It was the swan song of the series, as I said. It was the last one that really challenged its players in a conceptual, thematic level, while also bringing it to a point where you can see the franchise differently while still seeing what's so important about it. What are the things that make Shin Megami Tensei unique? It's that unique identity of being unlike anything else. It's challenging its players with thematic concepts that run deeper, that run farther than other RPGs of the time. It's about ideologies. It's about so many things. But generally it's that. It's a punk attitude of wanting to be different, of having very theosophical literary influences that make it almost on a higher level than other RPGs at the time, even if, once again, these games don't play as well, or aren't as flashy as other RPGs at the time. What's important about these games is that they stand out. Which brings us to 4, and why am I disappointed with the state of the series up to this point? Because I believe the people making it aren't Kazuma Kaneko. They aren't Koji Okada. They aren't people who have a vast degree of influences, but are instead more insular people who look towards themselves and the medium they're a part of. There are people who look at, well, I know, what do I know? Well, I know, I know Super Sentai. I know Kamen Rider. I know Shin Megami Tensei. Well, I'm gonna put all these little few things I know, and that's gonna be the next game. That's a feeling I get from games like Shin Megami Tensei 4, which brings us to the identity crisis. The problem with Shin Megami Tensei is that they don't understand the element of challenging its players. Even though Shin Megami Tensei 4 has more dialogue than other Shin Megami Tensei games, its attention to detail with world building, its attention to detail with characters, with character building isn't as strong as the other games. The characters are shallow, the world building is contradictory. But at the same time, Shin Megami Tensei 4 also simplifies those themes to their barest level. It brought back law, chaos, and neutral. But unlike Strange Journey, it didn't put them in a drastically different context. Unlike Shin Megami Tensei 2, it wasn't trying to make a deeper allegory with them. It's not really trying to do anything that Shin Megami Tensei didn't already do in 1992. And that's the biggest flaw. It's trying to bring back the surface level elements of Shin Megami Tensei and trying to make so many visual callbacks to compensate for the fact that deep down, even the developers, I think they can't, and they know they can't make a game like those older games. So they overcompensate with these visual callbacks, with these blatantly transparent motifs that exist as nothing more than a reminder of, well, this existed. Guys, we are still Shin Megami Tensei, okay? Even though at their soul, at their core, there are vastly different kinds of games, which challenge you less as a player intellectually. That challenge you less on a conceptual level, that fascinate me less. Despite the games being flashier, despite the games having stronger gameplay. Functionally speaking, they're all fine games. But contextually speaking, at least as far as the mainline series goes, it is on a decline. I can't comment too much on Deep Strange Journey because I haven't played it.
The art
Or I don't
sucks.
know I don't know much about the art sucks. I don't know much about the story. I know some of the endings, and it doesn't sound too bad, but I'd have to play it myself to really judge what it adds to the story. But I don't think it's that fair to say that, because Deep Strange Journey is a port of an earlier game. I'm talking about a fully original content. Which brings us to the Shin Megami Tensei 5 trailer. All I see are the same trends that made games like Shin Megami Tensei 4 so disappointing. In retrospect, I'm seeing visual callbacks galore. I'm seeing, but at the same time, I'm not seeing a story that really elevates that concept to a deeper level, at least not so far. If they do announce something like that, I would be perfectly happy to say, yes, SMT is back. I'm happy SMT is back. But until then, I am going to remain skeptical, because ultimately, I don't feel like the team either wants to or can make a Shin Megami Tensei game like those games of old. I don't think anyone really can make a game like Kazuma Kaneko and Koji Okada could. But unlike other teams like Persona Studio, I know Persona 3 and 4 are not exactly games that the super hardcore fans of Persona 1 and 2 are satisfied with personally, but at least those games could maintain a consistent identity that in their own way evolved the series and set the standard for JRPGs of that generation. That is undeniable. That games like Persona 3, 4, and even 5 became massively influential to their peers by being themselves, by ushering in on a new direction, by a creative who had a clear vision of what they wanted to do. With Shin Megami Tensei 4 and 4 Final by extension, the creatives are stuck because Shin Megami Tensei has such a well-defined identity. It's such a well-respected series with such a pedigree that they can't just make something that they want to make. I mean, SMT4 Final, I believe that was their attempt, and you guys know how I feel about that one.
Yeah.
And everyone has feelings about that game, which really
Yeah.
just proves to me that that is the identity crisis that's holding Shin Megami Tensei back, and that is why I can't have much hope for Shin Megami Tensei 5, because I don't think the people behind it really want to make a Shin Megami Tensei game like I want a Shin Megami Tensei game. I don't think they can or want to make a game like that. And if you like a game like that, that's fine. That's perfectly fine. You can enjoy it. You can find things in it that I can't. But for the reasons I like this series, games like Shin Megami Tensei 4 and 4 Final don't represent those elements that I love. And Shin Megami Tensei 5, unless it shows promise, actual promise in one of these trailers, then I'm gonna continue to remain skeptical to it until I find the time to play it when it does eventually come out in 2021. So to answer this rant of what I would like to see in Shin Megami Tensei 5, I would like to see understanding. I would like to see that the developers understand Shin Megami Tensei. Or if not, I would like to see the developers come up with a new, unique, creative direction that makes me not want to care that it's not staying true to Shin Megami Tensei because it's so good on its own terms. But until then, I don't know what I can think about this one.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry. I feel like I just went on a whole tangent that you guys didn't really get much of a chance to participate in. And Nick, you can cut this out if you want when you're editing this. It was extremely long. I think I talked for like 20 minutes or something, but
No,
it's a very complicated, very strong feelings, very long relationship with this series. And feel free to just put a too long don't watch disclaimer when I start, because I will never shut up about this series. My friends are already annoyed at me, and yeah.
No.
But it's fine. If you're a newcomer and you don't understand what I'm talking about, go play those older games if you haven't already. Go play Shin Megami Tensei 1. Go play Shin Megami Tensei 2. They're a bit old. But I think their ideas still hold up. Those are games that are still avant-garde to this day.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm definitely happy to see my friends playing it for the first time too, and seeing interest in playing it for the first time. And you know what? Try some of the other side series. Devil Survivor 1 is one of my favorite games of all time. It's a masterpiece. Go play that too. I'd rather show love to the games that I like that feel disappointed about the games that I don't like. So honestly, go play those games. Buy Nocturne HD when it comes out. Whatever.
Get the gold case.
Get the gold case, yeah. If it's even on sale.
With Hijiri's magazine.
Yeah, I wish.
If it's even on sale, it's not on sale anymore.
I hope we get
I want that
Hijiri's
so
magazine.
bad.
Hope we get.
Who knows? Who knows? We're probably not even gonna get a physical release because that's just how Western games work. But I trust Atlas. They always give us something nice. They're not Capcom.
No,
They're
absolutely
not Capcom.
All right.
Still waiting for that Ace Attorney physical release. God damn it.
Not happening. Maybe through limited run games or something, but you never know. Anyway, before we wrap up, when do you guys think we'll see some more news?
Boneax mentioned Tokyo Game Show, so I'm gonna have to agree with him on this one.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Like, it's gonna be a digital event, but I think it fits with like the timeline because like after we got like the first like let's say substantial trailer for or teaser for Persona 5, we later got the gameplay reveal.
Mm-hmm.
So
I would like to see a gameplay reveal. I think like that's something that could at least make me more excited that these teasers.
Yeah, like they owe us that. We haven't seen any gameplay yet.
I think something else about Shin Megami Tensei 5 is that it's very certain that it's had a very troubled development history. I blame it on the Switch. I blame it on the Switch being a very underpowered console that's a bit hard to optimize for, especially when you're running an engine as demanding as Unreal Engine 4.
Mm-hmm.
So, if you permit me to be cynical, the fact that we haven't seen... this trailer didn't really show us anything we haven't already seen before in some aspects. So, I get worried if we don't see a gameplay reveal soon enough. Like, by Tokyo Game Show. It should be inevitable, that's correct. I don't think they're gonna back down at this point.
I don't think they aren't showing it because like they are worried like, oh, this looks horrible. I think that they're just like keeping it
Oh no no
veiled
no!
for now.
I don't mean that in the sense that oh we're worried it might look horrible. I'm just meaning in the sense that we don't have anything to show because we're so stuck trying to make the Unreal Engine 4 work with this game that we just don't have anything to show for. Is what I'm saying, and that's why I'm saying if we don't see any gameplay at Tokyo Game Show, I would get worried about a delay because we should be seeing something pretty soon if the game is in any state to ship by next year.
Simultaneous release. Woo.
Yeah, simultaneous release.
I mean, if they're
It's
doing a
actually
That's a
simultaneous,
weird.
first. That's a precedent.
yeah,
It's a big deal, the simultaneous release.
yeah. I was gonna say if they're doing a simultaneous release next year, Atlas West, previously Atlas USA, must have some sort of build of the game already, I would assume. So
I hope they do.
they would have to, I would think.
And I hope this doesn't compromise the quality of the translations, because their translations are usually pretty good.
Yeah, that's true. All right, and then is there any closing thoughts before we wrap this up?
It's very, very bizarre that like I'm more worried about No More Heroes 3 than SMT 5 now.
Yeah.
I
Or
mean,
Bayo
it's
3.
fine. Or Bayonetta 3. I mean, those or Metroid Prime 4. That's another
Metroid
one.
Prime 4.
There.
Or
I mean,
Etrian Odyssey. Etrian
but
Odyssey
so far as
hasn't
I've
shown
heard,
anything.
apparently Suda51, the game, according to him, the game is playable. He's just for some reason hiding the gameplay.
Teasing.
I think it's more of an intentional thing, is what I've heard from other fans.
Didn't he show off the gameplay, but he just put his head in front of it the whole time?
Something like that, yeah.
That's classic. Gotta love that. All right. I don't have much.
I
more
mean,
to
I mean,
add.
all I can say is, you know what? If Shin Megami Tensei 5 runs at deadly premonition frame rates, I'm the one who called it. Just saying.
Yeah. All right. Well, if we don't have anything more to add, I think
Actually, I have something more to add.
go for it.
So back in 2003, there was this manga called Bokurano. It's really good. You guys should read it. It's one of my favorite manga of all time, and you're pretty cringe if you haven't read it already. So go to Manga Dex. Go buy it on Amazon. It's really fucking good. Believe me. Don't watch the anime, but read the manga. It's really fucking good, okay? It has my personal seal of approval. It is amazing. It is wonderful. And read Yumineko too while you're at it. And Bokurano. Read both.
All right. Well, this has been Ratupi from Ratupi's Game Room, here with Howard Heyman and Boneax.
Hey.
Yes. All right. Signing out, I guess.
Bye.
Bye.